Are you giving the class today?
He's fired up.
Cannot replace me at all. Is this clean water?
Okay, yeah. Just four.
One never knows.
There's no strange circumstances, don't worry.
There's no 10 tulsi leaves in there or something. Nice to have you back. Ariane, you were missed. You were conspicuous. He's your bodyguard. I didn't know that somebody's threatening you. Thank you for checking for the ants and stuff on the ISKCON. You're doing that for each class? You're doing that for everybody's class? Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balaba Girivaradari Gopi Jana Balaba Girivaradari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiramanachari Yamuna Tiramanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvrajikacharya Asatara Satya Sri Shrimad, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Shri Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Swami Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dhama ki jai, Mathura Dhama ki jai, Navadvip Mayapur Dhama ki jai, Jagannath Puri Dhama ki jai, Gangamai Jamuna Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Tulsi Maharani ki jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste, Sarasvati Deve, Gauravani Pacharane, Nirvasesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Deshatarane, Vandeham Shri Guru, Shri Yuta Padakamalam, Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha, Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Vanchakalpa Jubhischa Kripasanabhyabhata Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevo Namo Namah. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. It's April 8th, 2024 in Hillsborough, North Carolina, New Goloka, and we're going to be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 51, and we're going to be reading 15, 16, 17, and 18. I think we have 15 up right now, yes? Sayachita Suraganayar Indrayar Atmarakshane Asurbhya Paritras Asurebhya Paritrastais Tad Raksham So Karochchiram. Please chant. Sayachita Suraganayar Indrayar Atmarakshane Asurebhya Paritrastais Tadraksham So Karochchiram Sayachita Suraganayar Marakshane Asurebhya Paritrastais Tadraksham So Karochchiram Sayachita Suraganayar Indrayar Atmarakshane Asurebhya Paritrastais Tadraksham So Karochchiram Sayachita Suraganayar Indrayar Atmarakshane Asurebhya Paritrastais Tadraksham So Karochchiram Sayachita Suraganayar Indrayar Atmarakshane Asurebhya Paritrastais Tadraksham So Karochchiram Saha He Yachitaha requested Suraganai by the demigods Indra Adyai headed by Lord Indra Atma their own Rakshane for protection Asurebhya of the demons Paritrastai who were terrified Tat there raksham, protection, saha, he, akarot, carried out, chiram, for a long time. So this is the continuation of the answer to who was this Muchakunda who burned up Kalyavana in the cave. BBT translation, begged by Indra and the other demigods to help protect them when they were terrorized by the demons, Muchakunda defended them for a long time. So we're going to look at the commentary of Sanatana Goswami, who basically just repeats the verse. He was requested by Indra and others like Varuna to protect them. He protected them for 4 yugas. That's a very long time. 4 yugas. One whole yuga cycle. Okay, there's no BBT purport. We're going to go on to 16. Labda guyam te swapalam muchakandam ata bruvan rajan vira matam kritshrad bhavan na partipalanat. Now you see we have this word guham there. So guham here is a name for Kartikeya. I'm going to be looking a little later at the meaning of this word guham. BBT translations, when the demigods obtained Kartikeya as their general, they told Muchakunda, O king, you may now give up your troublesome duty of guarding us. Look at Sanatana Goswami's commentary. After being protected by Kartikeya, they spoke to him, or having obtained Kartikeya, their general, they then spoke to him. They addressed him with great respect. O king, dear sir, Bhavan, you may desist from protecting us, which brought suffering to you. Krichrat. Okay. On to 17. Nara lokam parityajya raja nihatakantatyam asam palayato vira kamaste sarva uhita. Abandoning an unopposed kingdom in the world of men, O valiant one, you neglected all your personal desires while engaged in protecting us. And Sanatana Goswami says, Kama means objects of the senses. O valiant one, you are capable of doing this. They use the word te, you or by you, to show affection. So it's rather interesting. The previous verse, they use bhavan. In many languages, there's more than one way of saying you. Like in English, we just have one you. But in many languages, there's different ways of saying you depending on to whom you're speaking and how intimate you are. So bhavan is a way of saying you that shows a lot of respect, and here te is a way of saying you that shows affection. So they're showing both respect and affection. Text 18. Sutta mahishyo bhavato gnatayo matya mantrina prajastha tulya kalina nahuna shantikalita. The children, queens, relatives, ministers, advisors, and subjects who were your contemporaries are no longer alive. They have all been swept away by time. Sanatana Goswami comments, Amatra refers to a tax collector and mantrina to a person who gives advice. They do not exist now because they have attained other bodies, kalitaha, or they have been taken away. This is a little explanation about, just want to read through these translations again. Just all the way through. Begged by Indra and the other demigods to help protect them when they were terrorized by the demons, Muchakunda defended them for a long time. When the demigods obtained Kartikeya as their general, they told Muchakunda, O king, you may now give up your troublesome duty of guarding us. Abandoning an unopposed kingdom in the world of men, O valiant one, you neglected all your personal desires while engaged in protecting us. The children, queens, relatives, ministers, advisors, and subjects who were your contemporaries are no longer alive. They have all been swept away by time. The Bhagavatam is full of, I remember Gopi Pranadana pointing this out years ago, that the Bhagavatam is full of stories primarily of those in the Kshatriya Varna. We have some stories, of course, that center on Brahmanas, and some that center on Vaishyas, and some that center on Shudras, but most of them are centered on Kshatriyas. And these Kshatriyas, we have two of them being referred to here, Muchakunda and Kartikeya. The service of those in this Kshatriya Varna are very important to the Lord. They fulfill a very important function in this material world. And of course, in the talks between Uddhava and Narada in the spiritual world, in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, it's explained that even in the spiritual world, Krishna often likes to play in Dwarka and Mathura as a Kshatriya. And these discussions are so palatable that even in Vrindavan, the Goswamis explain every evening there's entertainment. Right? Nowadays, people sit around their television in the evening. But used to be that villagers would come together and hear stories or see dramas every evening. And in the spiritual world, Krishna and his devotees gather in Vrindavan to see various dramas. And the dramas are these stories from the different Puranas of the Lord and his incarnations and his devotees. And they especially like to focus on battles. Battles between good and evil and those who are protecting the world. And these people are very important in the world. It's not possible for everybody, unless you're at the beginning of such a yuga when there's no varnas at all, for everyone to just sit around chanting Om. Right? There's evil in the world. There's difficulty in the world. There's people who are trying to upset, in the whole universe, who are trying to upset the world order. And therefore, we need those who are going to act as the Lord's arms. And I find it very interesting that today's verse is indirectly, with the part of Kartikeya and with the idea of Kshatriyas in general, related to the fact today we have a solar eclipse. And of course, when there are eclipses, that's when Rahu is attacking the sun or the moon. And this is very much related to another battle that took place on the shore of the ocean of milk between the demigods and the demons. So I want to look at Muchakunda and how he's acting here, ideally as a Vaishnava Kshatriya, and Kartikeya, who is also a Vaishnava Kshatriya. And then I would like to look at our modern day. How can those in the modern day, in 2024, who are Vaishnava Kshatriyas, work according to the Lord's plan? So here we see that Muchakunda is asked by the demigods, can you please come and help us and become our Senapati, become the head of our armies? That's extraordinary. That's absolutely extraordinary. We earthlings are generally being protected by the devas. We're pretty weak, we earthlings, compared to the demigods. They're taking care of us. For some earthly king, even though, as described yesterday, he was in the family of Ishvaku and Vivaswan, but still, for an earthly king to be asked to protect the demigods is very extraordinary. So we see this mood of a Kshatriya that she is willing to go and serve the other devotees of the Lord, to do what's needed, even if it's something extraordinary. And the fact that he's a human being that's leading the demigods is just, to me, it's inconceivable. That he's such an empowered jiva, that he's able to actually lead the demigods to fight against the asuras in the universe. And of course, even in the modern day, there's a lot of fiction about things like this, intergalactic battles where some human being saves the universe from demoniac forces. And these fictional stories come about because these things actually happened. And because these things actually, my own theory is because these things actually happened, they're there in kind of collective human memory. We were here on the planet in other lifetimes when these things happened. And therefore we have some human memory that there's some human being that's so extraordinary that they go into the cosmos and they're fighting, intergalactic, intersolar system wars against the demons. What's also really interesting about Muchakunda is that he makes the universe his family. So such a conception is there for the renunciates, those who are vanaprasthas and sannyasis, where they give up their family, but they make the world their family. Renunciation, Prabhupada says, is not narrowing, it's broadening. Instead of just serving your own spouse, your own children, you're seeing all the world as your family. But such a view is not just there for those who are renunciates. It's also there for especially for the kshatriyas, who are considered to be the main mothers and fathers of society. And they see all the living entities as their children. Of course, Srila Prabhupada often makes the point that it's not just other humans. They see the cows and the deer and the trees and everything as their family, the tigers, that they're supposed to take care of everything, all of the flora, all of the fauna, all of the living entities, as if they were their own family. And in doing this, they may sometimes appear to neglect their own personal family. I think this is one of the hallmarks, particularly of the kshatriyas. Even at the modern time, we know that someone who's in the military or someone who's a police officer or someone who's a firefighter or a first responder of some sort or in the diplomatic corps or people who have jobs like that in the field of government, they may have to be away from their families for an extended period of time. They may have to work odd hours. You know, the criminals may attack at 2 o'clock in the morning and you have to go and, fight against the criminal element. And you have to be willing to sacrifice, literally your arm and your leg and your ear and your eye and your life for the sake of protecting people in general. And so the family members of somebody in that mood also has to be in this mood of sacrificing. When Srila Prabhupada discusses the mentality of a kshatriya, he gives the example of one queen where her husband comes back from the battle and he comes to the gate of the palace. And the servant comes to the queen and says, "Your husband has returned." And she said, "Oh, is he either wounded or victorious?" And he asked the king, and the king says, "No, I am neither wounded nor victorious." And then the queen tells the servant, "This is an impostor. Don't let him in." And the king, hearing this message, goes back to the battlefield and wins the battle. So the idea is that the whole mood of those in this kshatriya varna are of sacrificing for the sake of the greater family. And we see here that King Muchukunda, he's fighting for the demigods for such a long time that all of his friends and family and assistants, they've all died. Because time works differently in different parts of the universe. This is part of Einstein's theory of relativity. That if you go into outer space, you age differently than if you were on this earth. But he has that mood. And it's amazing that he's able to live beyond earthly time. There is some concept of time travel in the Shastra. It's always future. It's never past. But you can go to higher planets where you end up in the future when you come back to earth. And we have many instances of this. We have King Indrajumna when he was building the Jagannath Puri temple, when he went to, he left the planet and he came back and the temple was covered. He couldn't even see it anymore. It was all under the earth. And we have, of course, Revati's father. What's his name? Starts with a K. When he was looking for a good husband for his daughter, and he went all the way to Lord Brahma's planet with his daughter to consult Lord Brahma, who should I marry my daughter to? And he had to wait because Lord Brahma was listening to a musical performance of the Gandharvas. And when Lord Brahma finished, he said, "Everyone you've considered to marry your daughter has long since died." He said, all those men, their sons, their grandsons, their great-grandsons, he said, no one even remembers their names. But you should marry your daughter to Balaram, who is eternal and on the earth right now. So he's living beyond earthly time. I mean, just think of how much he's sacrificing for the sake of service. The demigods say, Kamas, you put aside your own desires. You put aside your own relation with your family, your own time. And this will be very significant at the end of this chapter when Krishna tells Muchukunda that you need to go perform austerities for all of the killing you did as a kshatriya. And then you can take another birth and go back to Godhead. And this, of course, is very astonishing. But our acharyas comment that this other birth is going to be directly in Krishna's Leelas or in Vaikuntha. It's not, he doesn't really have to go through another material birth. And the reason Krishna did this was that Muchakunda was very large because he came from another yuga. He was a giant. And the Lord didn't know how to fit him into his Leelas. He was like, I can't really fit him into my current Leela because he's from another time. So he came from another time. Huh? And we also find that he's constantly devoted to Krishna. He's fighting he's fighting on behalf of the demigods against the demons as an offering to the Lord. He's using his incredible empowerment and his incredible Shakti as an offering to the Lord, which is, of course, why he gets to see the Lord and engage in some personal service to the Lord by the killing of Kalyavana. The other very interesting thing is that in this particular verses that we're looking at today, is he's being asked now to retire. So the demigods are saying to him, your replacement is now here, and so you can retire. Kartikeya is here. We don't need you anymore. Now we have Kartikeya, so you don't need to do this anymore. You can retire. And Muchakunda gracefully accepts this. He doesn't argue with it. He doesn't say, well, I'm indispensable and I'm so important and how is the universe going to go on? Again, think of how powerful he is, that he's able to be the commander-in-chief of the demigods, but he doesn't say, well, I'm so strong, I have to be here. And he's still young because he's been beyond time. He just says, fine, no problem. In fact, I was a little tired anyway, and I think I just like to get some sleep. So this is actually the mood, no matter how powerful one is in this world, and in whatever occupation one has, when it's time to retire, one retires. Like Srila Prabhupada would give the example of a shop, if they're going to close at 5 o'clock, even if there's more customers, then they close. So I had this experience when in Detroit, I was like 8 months pregnant with Keshava, and so Champaka was like 3 years old, and I had put her in a stroller, and we only had one car. My husband had the car out, and so I walked to the bank. And, when you're 8 months pregnant, you're not walking very quickly. You walk rather slowly, like a duck. So, I'm walking very, very slowly to the bank, and I get there at, 2 minutes to 5, right? And they were already closed. And they didn't care, here's this heavily pregnant woman with a baby at the door, and they didn't care that there was 2 minutes left on the clock. We're closed. Sorry, I couldn't get into the bank. So Prabhupada gives this example. When you're closed, you're closed. Okay? It doesn't matter. You don't say, well, I have so many things more to do. Of course, ultimately, we all have this at death. Prabhupada likes to talk about this man he knew who was on his deathbed, and he's begging the doctor, please give me 4 more years so I can finish my plans. And the doctor says, sorry, I don't have 4 years in my pocket to give you. So it's the same with letting go of our responsibilities. Srila Prabhupada was very critical of Gandhi, who stayed in that position of a government leader, who stayed in that position of kshatriya after it was time for him to retire. So whatever our position is, no matter how important we are, no matter how much we have to do, no matter how talented we are, no matter how empowered we are, there comes a time to move on. Right? That's the whole idea of the ashram system. There comes a time to graduate from school and either become a responsible full-time renunciate or get married and have a family. And there comes a time when the children are grown and one gets older, that one retires from family life and business. And then there comes a time to leave the world, that everything has its time. So now I want to look at Kartikeya, because Kartikeya is Muchakunda's replacement. And we find, and I bring this up periodically in my classes, that the Bhagavatam is very interested in succession. There's a huge focus throughout the whole Srimad Bhagavatam that you've got to train someone else, you've got to have a qualified person to take over when you retire. You don't just retire. You don't just say, well, I'm out of here. I mean, we do have one instance of that. We have King Unga who just did that, who just said, I'm out of here, and left in the middle of the night. And it was a huge problem for the kingdom that he did that he didn't have a properly trained successor. So this concept, this is why in the Bhagavatam, all these kings are so into having a son. This is why that gurus want to have a disciple who becomes a guru. This is why Srila Prabhupada said, I want all of my disciples to become gurus. And Srila Prabhupada didn't just set up ISKCON to have a person become his successor, but he set up the society so that the mission would go on. That was Srila Prabhupada's whole idea of setting up a GBC in 1970. That was Srila Prabhupada's whole idea of making the BBT legally separate from the GBC. It was Srila Prabhupada's whole idea in making each temple separately incorporated. There were so many ways in which Srila Prabhupada was thinking about succession. How will things go on? So you make sure you train someone else in what you're doing. There should always be someone being trained, because we never know. We can be taken out of the world at any time. We can be sidelined at any time. It's not that, oh, I got sick, I broke my foot, or I'm going to die, or I'm ready to retire, and nobody else knows how to do anything, and nobody else knows what to do. So here was the successor, and the demigods were working on finding the successor. Now, there's many different ways that the birth of Kartikeya is described. There are many different Puranas and many different histories. There's at least 4 different descriptions of the birth of Kartikeya. Srila Prabhupada just says he was the son of Lord Shiva and his wife Sati. So I'm just going to leave it at that, because I could spend an hour talking about all these different ways. And I personally have a lot of skepticism about stories that are just sort of told in tradition, or maybe it's in this one Purana and we don't even know if the verses are bona fide and things like that. So I'm just going to put that aside and put him as the son of Shiva and Sati. Now, Kartikeya represents Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 10:24. Krishna says, of all the military commanders, I am Kartikeya. And he also takes part in Krishna's pastimes. So in Bhagavatam 3:130, Vidura is asking about the welfare of the Yadu dynasty. And he says, how is Jambavati's son Samba, who is also Kartikeya? So this Kartikeya enters into Krishna's Dwarka Leela as Samba, and Samba's a real character. So we have Krishna's chief queen, his first queen is Rukmini, and sometimes it's said his favorite queen is Satyabhama, but his pet children were the children of Jambavati. And this child of Jambavati, Samba, Sa-amba, means he was also the pet of his mother. So he was the pet child of both his father and his mother. And because of that, he was a little cocky. He was a little cheeky, as they'd say in the UK, because he knew that my parents will always protect me. So when he was a young boy, he went with some of the other Yadu children, and he dressed up as a girl, and he put an iron club under his clothing, and he asked the sages, he had his friends ask the sages, our friend here is pregnant. Is she going to have a boy or a girl? And the sages were offended. And they said, he's going to produce a club which will destroy the Yadu dynasty. And that's exactly what happened. And then he also kidnaps Duryodhana's daughter Lakshmana at her Swayamvara. So she was supposed to choose her husband. And he just kidnaps her and carries her away. And this results in a whole very tense situation between the Yadus, where the Kauravas and the Yadus were at odds, and Balaram comes to be the mediator. And then there's all this insulting of Krishna that the Kauravas do, and Balaram becomes very angry, and he starts pulling Hastinapur into the Ganga, and anyway, everything's finally rectified, and Samba marries Lakshmana. But that is also Kartikeya. And then, as we say, today we're going to have this solar eclipse. So the eclipses come because the Lord, as Mohini, cuts off the head of Rahu, who's an eternal enemy of the sun and the moon. Rahu is sitting between the sun and the moon, and Rahu periodically tries to swallow the sun and the moon. Now, this, when Mohini kills Rahu, is when she reveals that she's Vishnu. It's that moment when she takes out her Sudarshan and cuts off the head of Rahu that everyone goes, oops, who is she? And then the demons rise up in battle. We've been tricked again by Vishnu. And then there's huge battle that takes place on the shore of the ocean of milk. And there's particular persons who fight with particular persons. And Kartikeya fights with Tadaka. In fact, Kartikeya was born specifically to fight with Tadaka. That Tadaka was a demon who had a benediction from Lord Shiva that he could only be killed by a 7-day-old infant. And Kartikeya killed Tadaka 7 days after his appearance. And now we also find, though, that Kartikeya sometimes apparently fights on the wrong side. We have Banasura, who's a devotee of Lord Shiva. And when there was a big fight with Krishna, that was over the kidnapping of Aniruddha by Usha. So Kartikeya was there fighting with Pradyumna. Now again, this is fascinating because Kartikeya has also expanded himself as Samba, one of Pradyumna's brothers. But here Kartikeya is fighting with Pradyumna, Krishna's first son from his first wife Rukmini. And Pradyumna wounds Kartikeya so badly that he has to leave the battlefield. So here we have Kartikeya, who's the chief general of the demigods, but yet he's wounded by Pradyumna. Now, Kartikeya is called Kartikeya because he was nursed by the Kritikas, who are in the Pleiades. The Kritikas are the wives of the 7 sages, and that's a whole other story that I will not get into, but that is why he is called Kartikeya. And he is one of the rulers of the planet Mars. Kartikeya represents martial, the kind of the height of the Kshatriya mood. The Kritikas, the Nakshatra Kritika, is a cutting. Kritika means to cut, cutting without tenderness, without mercy, just being there on the battlefield. And Mars represents this martial energy. It's why we call it martial. Its color is orange, and its day is Tuesday, and its ruler is Kartikeya. But every one of the planets also has an incarnation of Krishna, who's its ruler. Can anyone guess what incarnation of Krishna rules Mars and Tuesday? Huh? Two good guesses. Parshuram rules Friday. Nrsingadev. Nrsingadev is also the ruler of Mars. Now, Kartikeya is also a philosopher and a guru. As we know, a guru can be in any of the 4 varnas. And there are many Kshatriyas who are Rajarshis. They're not just fighters, they're great philosophers. So the name for Kartikeya that indicates this is the name given in today's verses, which is Guha. And he is called Guha because he resides in Guha, or the heart of all creatures. Guha, by the way, Kartikeya is called Guha in many, many places in the Bhagavatam. And Guha also refers to the cave of the heart. I remember Gopi Prananandapu giving one class on that. So there's a nice verse from the Shiva Purana, Kailash Samhita, chapter 11. The translation is I would read the verse, but I don't have time. Salutations to Guha, who resides in Guha, the heart of all living beings, who is secret Guyaya, who has a secret form, Guyarupaye, and who knows the secret agamas, Guyagama Vide. So Kartikeya, as a representative of Krishna, is also pervading the universe and is a great philosopher and also represents the guru principle. There are many groups in India who directly worship Kartikeya, especially those related with the Tamil language. So throughout South India, you will see devotees of Kartikeya, and he's a very popular deity also in Lanka and in areas in Southeast Asia like, Malaysia, where there's a huge Tamil population. So obviously, our modern Kshatriyas cannot expect to be asked by the Devas to lead their army. So that's not to be expected. that Indra and Varuna and Vayu and Agni are going to come and ask you to conquer the demons of the universe, and that the only person who's able to replace you is Kartikeya. But even modern devotees who are in this Kshatriya mood, they can be fighting for morals and justice and ethics in the world. That's their sphere. The Brahmanas fight for truth and wisdom, and the Kshatriyas fight for morals and ethics and justice, and the Vaishyas fight for sustainable regenerative wealth, and the Shudras fight for a high level of integrity and honesty in all of the crafts and skills of the world. So this is the domain of the Kshatriyas. They also run into danger. We have this word Abhimanyu as the son of Arjuna, and Manyu means danger, and Abhi means toward. If you think of firefighters who run into the fire when everyone else is running out, or the police officers who, there's shooting going on in a school and they run into the building, right? Not like fake Kshatriyas, like we had those, right? A couple years ago, those police officers who didn't go into the school shooting because there was shooting going on. And their main purpose in the society is to keep peace and security and stability. It's not that they're trying to foment crises, but their main dharma is to keep crises from happening, to keep there to be peace, protection, security, and stability. Although when a crisis comes along, they're energized by that. These are some of the special demarcations of somebody with the Kshatriya mood, that they run into danger and that they're energized by crises. When a crisis comes, they have a state of calm focus, unlike most other people who, when a crisis comes, they go into a panic and they run the other direction. So whatever our nature is, it's not really that one nature is better than another. Some people think it's better to be a Brahmana, but we couldn't have a society with a bunch of floating heads. That wouldn't work. It wouldn't function. In fact, for the Shudras, it's said in the Bhagavatam 2nd canto that they're particularly under the protection of the Lord's lotus feet, because the Shudras especially have the mood of service. The Vaishyas are compared to the belly, which Prabhupada often uses metaphorically like God, that you have to serve God just like you have to put food in your belly. And the Kshatriyas are the arms, those who are giving protection, and those who are giving care, just like a parent. And so everybody, according to our nature, it doesn't matter what our nature is in this life. It really doesn't matter. There isn't one that's better than another. You can't say, well, I'll live without my legs. If you have your legs cut off, you're going to have to get prosthetics or a wheelchair. But the point is to take everything and use it in Krishna's service, using these examples of Muchakunda and Kartikeya. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandar Ako Vidamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasa Sakale Priya Priti Manti Vasyanti Panti Kayanti Chiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam.
Iti namane Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nirvisesha Sanyavadi Paschatya Desatarini Saraswati Devi Jai Prabhupada Gauravani Pacharini Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktarinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktarinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktarinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktarinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda, Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare